When we talk about the 1880s, many people immediately think of a brilliant era of development, great inventions, and a rapidly emerging America on the global stage. It was dubbed the Gilded Age, a name that conjures images of glamour, wealth, and prosperity. But was everything truly as sparkling as that thin layer of gold? Or were there hidden facets, challenges, and conflicts that few people know about beneath the surface? Let's find out, and don't forget to stick around until the end of the video to reflect together on the invaluable historical lessons from the 1880s. General context and transformation. Dawn of a new era. The 1880s wasn't just a simple stretch of time. It was considered a period of economic growth and prosperity on a global scale, particularly in Europe and America. It was an integral part of the Gilded Age in the United States from 1874 to 1907, alongside the Victorian era in the British Empire and the Belle Époque in France. These names all paint a picture of strong development, remarkable progress, and a profound belief in the future. More importantly, this decade marked the peak of the Second Industrial Revolution. While the First Industrial Revolution focused on steam power and textiles, this second wave was defined by revolutionary breakthroughs in science and technology, especially the rapid proliferation of electricity. Electricity didn't just light up streets and homes. It powered factories, engines, and public transportation systems, ushering in a new era of production and movement. Imagine America in 1880, a nation with 38 states and about 50 million people. Remarkably, at that time, most of the population still lived and worked on farms or in small rural communities. However, this picture was rapidly changing. A huge new wave of immigration from Europe was pouring onto America's shores, bringing with it a powerful demographic shift from rural areas to bustling urban centers. For Americans born in the 1840s to 1850s, their lives witnessed astonishing and unbelievable changes. They grew up in a world that still used candles, then gradually transitioned to kerosene lamps, and now, the brilliant glow of electric lights, a spectacular shift in lighting technology. Travel was no longer limited to walking or horseback riding, but had been revolutionized by steam locomotives, streetcars, and even gasoline-powered automobiles. These inventions weren't just conveniences. They were symbols of continuous progress, reshaping how people worked, lived, and interacted with the world around them. The 1880s vividly demonstrated a transformative industrial revolution that profoundly impacted every aspect of life. From a backward agricultural nation, America was rapidly transforming into an industrial powerhouse. This was the period when the foundations for the remarkable development of the 20th century were laid, from transportation systems and mass production to the formation of large cities. This transformation wasn't just about technology or economics. It was a deep shift in the social structure, mindset, and lifestyle of people. Generations living in this decade witnessed a world redefined right before their eyes, a world where what seemed impossible now became reality. Economy and industrialization, a giant machine speeding up. Industrial development in the 1880s wasn't just about increased output. It was a profound social transformative force in America. It created a new social structure with three main growing classes. First, the class of wealthy industrialists, the tycoons who owned massive business empires, controlled key industries, and accumulated immense fortunes. Second, the prosperous middle class, including professionals, managers, and small business owners, who benefited from economic growth and enjoyed a more stable life. And finally, but no less important, the significantly expanding blue-collar working class, those who worked directly in factories, mines, and construction sites, forming the backbone of the nation's development. In the 1880s, not only did traditional industries expand, but many entirely new industries also emerged, reshaping the national economy. We're talking about the boom in oil refining, with names like Rockefeller, the growth of steel production, where Andrew Carnegie built his empire, and the birth of electric power, pioneered by Thomas Edison. These industries not only created new goods and services, but also drove innovation and competition. But what truly connected all these pieces together? It was the railroads. The railway system expanded incredibly, reaching even the most remote parts of the country, bringing them into the national market economy. This meant agricultural products from the West could be transported to eastern cities, coal from Pennsylvania could reach factories in Illinois, and manufactured goods could get into the hands of consumers everywhere. The expansion of railroads also brought about a symbolic and practical change. By 1890, the United States had been divided into 4 separate time zones. This wasn't just a convenience, but a necessary standardization to simplify train schedules and business operations nationwide. Look at the change in the labor structure. In 1880, nearly half of American workers were still farmers. Just under 15% worked in manufacturing. But only 40 years later, by 1920, the number of agricultural and industrial workers was nearly equal. This shows the immense speed of urbanization and industrialization, as millions left their farms to seek opportunities in cities. The development of commercial electricity in the late 19th century was another key factor. It allowed industries to maximize the abundant labor supply in large cities. Factories were no longer tied to water or coal sources, but could be located anywhere with electricity, attracting workers from all over. Also, in this decade, we witnessed the birth and growth of modern business forms. Giant corporations, franchises, and long-standing brands were established. These laid the foundation for the modern capitalist economic system. And an unmissable symbol of this era was the appearance of the skyscraper. These tall buildings were not just architectural structures, but symbols of the wealth, power, and ambition of modern cities. The Home Insurance Building in Chicago, opened in 1885, is considered the first skyscraper in history. It was not only an engineering feat, but also became the tallest man-made structure in the world at that time. Just imagine, in a single decade, America transformed from an agricultural nation into an industrial powerhouse, with the gigantic engines of its economy accelerating relentlessly. Migration and urbanization, a wave of hope and harsh reality. When talking about migration to America in the 1880s, we cannot fail to mention a majestic symbol standing tall at New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty. For millions of immigrants from all over the world, this statue was not just an architectural marvel, but a shining symbol of hope, a promise of a better life in a land where freedom and justice reigned. They left their homelands seeking opportunity, escaping poverty, war, or persecution with a strong belief in the American dream. However, a better life didn't come immediately. Harsh reality often greeted the newcomers. Millions of immigrants often flocked to crowded areas like Lower Manhattan Island, where they had to live packed into cramped slums with poor sanitation and extremely limited living space. Imagine an area where over 500,000 people lived per square mile, a terrifying population density, leading to rapid disease spread and an incredibly difficult life. This was a reality that starkly contrasted with the image of the land of opportunity they had envisioned. This migration occurred on a massive scale. From 1880 to 1920, the number of immigrants increased from nearly 7 million to almost 14 million. And if we include the second generation, the children of immigrants, then by 1920, more than 1/3 of the 105 million Americans belonged to the immigrant community. These figures show the enormous impact of this wave of migration on America's population and social structure. Immigrants and their children played an extremely important role in America's industrial development. By 1920, they accounted for over half of all manufacturing workers. In fact, if we include the third generation, Over two-thirds of workers in the manufacturing sector were of recent immigrant origin. They were the primary labor force, pouring their sweat and effort into factories, mines, and construction sites to build America's colossal industry. A sad truth is that these immigrants often had to accept lower wages and poorer working conditions compared to native-born laborers. They had limited options, and fierce job competition made them vulnerable to exploitation. Nevertheless, their diligence and endurance became a decisive factor for the speed of America's industrial development in the 1880s. Without this abundant and willing workforce, America's industrial machine could hardly have accelerated so rapidly. Along with the wave of migration was the explosion of urbanization. The 1880s was the first decade in U.S. history, excluding the Civil War decade, where the urban population grew more than the rural population. Cities boomed in size and population, becoming economic, cultural, and social centers. This shift created a new picture of America. No longer a nation of sprawling farms, but a nation of vibrant, though sometimes chaotic and problem-ridden, cities. Do you think the contribution of immigrants was a decisive factor for the speed of industrial development in the U.S. in the 1880s? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Politics and notable events. Turbulence at the peak of power. The 1880s was a particularly chaotic period in American politics, witnessing continuous changes in the presidency. In just one decade, the United States had 5 different presidents, the most since the 1840s. They were Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, and Benjamin Harrison. This change partly reflected the deep tensions and divisions within American society at the time. One of the most shocking events of the decade was the assassination of President James Garfield on September 19, 1881. He was shot by Charles Guiteau, a disgruntled lawyer who was not appointed to a diplomatic position. This event exposed the weaknesses of the spoils system in politics, where public offices were given to party loyalists rather than based on merit. After President Arthur took office, he recognized the need for reform. He strongly supported the Pendleton Act, passed in 1883. This act was a significant milestone, calling for civil service appointments to be made by the newly established civil service system, rather than by the political party in power. This was a major step towards combating corruption and improving the efficiency of the government apparatus. However, the 1880s also saw controversial and discriminatory policies. Most notably was the Chinese Exclusion Act, signed into law by President Chester A. Arthur on May 3, 1882. This act prohibited Chinese immigration to the U.S. for 10 years. This was one of the first and most brutal restrictive immigration laws in American history, reflecting the deep xenophobia and racial discrimination against Asians at the time. Internationally, a notable historical event occurred on May 13, 1888, when Brazil officially abolished slavery. This made Brazil the last nation in the Western Hemisphere to do so, marking the end of a dark era in human history. Back in the United States, westward expansion continued. In 1889, President Harrison declared Native American lands in Oklahoma open for white settlement. This led to the famous Oklahoma Land Rush, where thousands of people scrambled to claim newly opened lands, a dramatic spectacle of land hunger and changing frontiers. During the same period, the final resistance of Native Americans to white expansion was suppressed. 2 prominent Native American figures faced tragic fates: Sitting Bull, chief of the Hunkpapa Lakota tribe, and one of the greatest leaders, surrendered in 1881. A few years later, in 1886, Geronimo, the brave Apache leader, was also captured. These events marked the end of decades-long border wars and were a sad chapter in Native American history. These political upheavals and notable events painted a complex picture of America in the 1880s, a nation struggling to define itself in a rapidly changing world, with both democratic advances and many persisting injustices. Challenges and social conflicts, voices that couldn't be silenced. The 1880s was not only a period of economic growth, but also a time filled with great violence and major political upheaval. Social conflicts erupted in many places, reflecting tensions between different classes, races, and interests. In the American West, tensions between authorities and outlaws reached a climax, leading to one of the most famous gunfights in American history, the gunfight at OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona, in 1881. This was the legendary confrontation between the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday against the Clanton and McClory gangs. Although it lasted only about 30 seconds, it became a symbol of the Wild West era. In the same year, another famous outlaw, Jesse James, was also shot dead by Bob Ford in 1882, marking the end of a criminal legend, but also the beginning of a change in how law and order were applied in the West. However, larger conflicts stemmed from deeper social issues, especially in the labor sector. On May 4, 1886, Haymarket Square in Chicago became the scene of a tragic and shocking bombing. The incident occurred during a large workers' protest demanding an 8-hour workday when a bomb was thrown at police, killing at least 7 officers and 4 civilians. Although the perpetrator was never clearly identified, the event led to the arrest and conviction of many labor activists and is considered the origin of modern International Workers' Day protests. The Haymarket Affair intensified tensions between employers and workers and further fueled the labor movement. In this context, labor unions began to form and grow stronger to fight for basic workers' rights, better wages, reasonable hours, and safer working conditions. They realized that only through unity could they have a voice against employers and large corporations. In 1886, one of the most influential labor unions was founded, the American Federation of Labor, AFL, established by Samuel Gompers. The AFL focused on improving working conditions for skilled workers, becoming a significant political and social force for decades thereafter. Not only workers, but many farmers also faced mounting difficulties in the 1880s. Increased technology and production led to fierce competition and falling agricultural prices. This left many farmers in debt and losing their land. To cope, farmers began to organize into groups like Granges and Farmers' Alliances. These organizations acted as cooperatives, provided information, and lobbied to protect farmers' interests. Some even tried to form a new political party, the People's Party, also known as populists. However, their candidates did not perform well in major elections, demonstrating the difficulty of assembling a strong enough political force from farmers and workers. In addition to human-made social conflicts, the 1880s also witnessed a terrible natural disaster. The collapse of the South Fork Dam after heavy rains caused devastating floods in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in May 1889. This disaster killed over 2,000 people, becoming one of the largest disasters in U.S. history. Amidst the devastation and sorrow, the image of Nurse Clara Barton emerged as a symbol of compassion. As the founder of the American Red Cross, she provided significant relief, staying in Johnstown for 5 months, coordinating aid activities for the victims. Her dedication earned the deep gratitude of the local people and the respect of the entire nation. Do you see any similarities between the social movements and labor struggles of the 1880s and social struggles today? Let us know your thoughts. New science and technology, a revolution shaping the future. The 1880s was a golden decade of innovation, where great minds created inventions that completely changed human life and laid the foundation for the 20th century. Electricity. We cannot fail to mention Thomas Edison, known as the Wizard of Menlo Park. In December 1880, he founded the Edison Electric Light Company, pioneering the electricity industry. But the pinnacle of his career in this decade must be the opening of Pearl Street Station in New York. In September 1882, this first central power plant in the United States began operation, supplying electricity to a large area of Lower Manhattan, lighting up homes, offices, and streets, ushering in a new era of light and energy. This was a crucial turning point, from single light bulbs to a large-scale power distribution system, signaling the birth of a colossal industry. Transportation. The field of transportation also saw incredible leaps. In 1885, Carl Benz introduced the Benz patent motor wagon, a long name with great historical significance. It is considered the first automobile in the world. This invention paved the way for the development of the automobile industry, changing how people traveled and profoundly impacting urban planning. In 1883, the famous long-distance passenger train, the Orient Express, began running between Paris and Constantinople, now Istanbul. This was not just a railway line, but a symbol of luxury, connecting cultures and expanding the frontiers of travel. Not only that, streetcars and trains were first powered by electricity. This made public transportation more efficient, faster, and cleaner, promoting the growth of large cities. And a simpler yet very popular vehicle was the bicycle. The new low-wheel bicycle, also known as the safety bike, became popular. With its design of two equally sized wheels and a chain-driven system, it made cycling much easier and safer than the high-wheel bicycles before it, opening up a new form of recreation and transportation for everyone. Communication. The 1880s also witnessed foundational inventions for the communication revolution that followed. In 1880, Oliver Heaviside patented the coaxial cable, an efficient electrical signal transmission technology, paving the way for long-distance telephone calls, television, and the Internet. In 1884, Paul Gottlieb Nipkow invented the Nipkow disk, an image scanning device. This was the basis for the first electromechanical television system, laying the groundwork for the future development of television. In 1888, German physicist Heinrich Hertz successfully transmitted and received radio waves. This was a groundbreaking discovery, proving the existence of electromagnetic waves and opening the door to wireless communication. And in 1889, Alman Brown Stroger patented the step-by-step switch. This invention revolutionized the telephone system, allowing for automatic telephone exchanges. This meant callers could dial directly to the recipient without going through a manual operator, making phone communication much faster and more convenient. Photography, cinema. These two fields also made huge strides. George Eastman introduced the Kodak #1 camera, a great success in 1888. With the slogan, "You push the button, we do the rest," it made photography more accessible to the public, no longer an exclusive privilege of professional photographers. In 1889, Edison himself, with his creativity, used Eastman's new celluloid film to project a series of images onto a screen. This is considered the historic moment when he invented cinema, opening up a completely new art form and entertainment. These inventions were not just mere scientific achievements. They changed the way people lived, worked, moved, and communicated, creating a true revolution that shaped our future. Culture and social life, the colors of an era. The 1880s was not only a period of economic and scientific transformation, but also a time of cultural and social life explosion, shaping many trends and styles that still influence us today. Literature and art. This was a golden age of literature. Mark Twain, one of America's greatest writers, published his masterpiece, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, in 1884. This novel was not just an adventure story, but also a deep social critique of race, freedom, and morality. In Italy, Carlo Collodi released The Adventures of Pinocchio in 1883, a classic fairy tale about a wooden boy dreaming of becoming real, carrying deep educational meaning. And in the detective genre, Arthur Conan Doyle published his first Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet, in 1887, introducing one of the most famous detectives of all time and revolutionizing the genre. In music, African-American music and the genre of ragtime began to gain popularity. With its syncopated rhythms and cheerful melodies, ragtime was an important precursor to jazz, representing the development of America's unique musical culture. In painting, we witnessed the emergence of exceptional talents. Vincent van Gogh, one of the greatest painters of all time, painted immortal works like Irises in 1889 and The Starry Night in 1889. These paintings were not just masterpieces of the post-impressionist school, but also symbols of intense creativity and emotion. And in Paris, the artistic and entertainment capital of the world, the Moulin Rouge, one of the most famous cabarets, opened in 1889. It became a symbol of vibrant nightlife, entertainment art, and Parisian bohemian culture. Architecture. The 1880s was also an incredible period for architecture. The Brooklyn Bridge, a great engineering feat connecting Brooklyn and Manhattan, New York, was completed on May 24, 1883. With the installation of 70 arc lamps, it was not only a functional bridge, but also a symbol of innovation and vision, one of the most prominent architectural works of this era. In France, another grand architectural symbol was inaugurated, the Eiffel Tower. Opened on March 31, 1889, the Eiffel Tower was not only the gateway to the World's Fair, but also became the tallest structure in the world at the time. It stood as a testament to engineering talent and bold design. Sports. The field of sports also saw important developments. In 1882, Kano Jigoro, a Japanese martial arts master, created judo. This was not just a martial art, but a philosophy of life, emphasizing flexibility and technique, and it spread worldwide. Baseball, America's favorite pastime, underwent significant changes. In 1884, pitchers were first allowed to throw pitches overhand instead of just underhand. This completely changed the tactics and gameplay of the sport. American football, at the time, was still considered a game for brutes and barbarians due to its violent nature. However, Walter Camp introduced the basic rules of modern football, laying the groundwork for the sport to develop into a cultural phenomenon in America. Golf also began to be played in America with the establishment of the Foxburg Golf Club in 1887, marking the beginning of an aristocratic sport in the land of the stars and stripes. Fashion. Fashion in the 1880s was characterized by the philosophy, more is better. Stylish women wore outfits with many layers of fabric, covering their bodies from head to toe. In particular, they used tight corsets to create a slender waist, and bustles, a type of padded frame at the back, to create an impressive hourglass figure, a distinctive image of this period. Food and drinks. One of the most important inventions in the food and beverage industry of this decade was Coca-Cola, invented in May 1886 by pharmacist John Pemberton. Originally a tonic, it quickly became a popular global soft drink. Education and healthcare. Despite many advances, educational and healthcare systems were still in their early stages. Most schools had only 1 or 2 rooms and 1 or 2 teachers teaching all grade levels. Education was still very basic and not widely accessible. In medicine, doctors were often not well trained or highly paid. Patent medicines, often mixed with alcohol or narcotics, were widely sold and not strictly regulated, sometimes causing more harm than good. Which invention or historical event from the 1880s do you think had the biggest impact on life today? Comment below. So, we've completed an incredible journey through the 1880s in America. From the first electric lights illuminating the night, transcontinental trains connecting every corner of the country, to skyscrapers reaching for the sky. We witnessed a period where the Second Industrial Revolution peaked, profoundly changing how people lived and worked. But beneath the gilded layer of prosperity, we also explored the challenging hidden aspects. These included the harsh lives of millions of immigrants, the arduous struggles of the working class and farmers, dramatic political upheavals, and even terrible disasters. The 1880s was truly a dramatic chapter in American history, a decade that shaped a more modern and complex society. Every invention, every event, every social struggle left a deep mark, not only in history, but also influencing our lives today. We hope this journey back in time has given you new and profound insights into this pivotal decade. History is not just about past events, but also invaluable lessons that help us better understand the present and shape the future. The Lincoln Highway, the story of America's first highway. Before the modern interstate system emerged, even before the legendary Route 66 crisscrossed America, there was one road that captured the hearts and attention of the American public. A road that didn't just lead to new horizons, but forever changed how we travel, how we explore, and even how we define ourselves on this vast map. That was the Lincoln Highway, America's first transcontinental automobile road, stretching from the glittering New York City's Times Square on the East Coast to sunny San Francisco on the West Coast. Join us as we turn back time, returning to a golden era of road adventures to discover this magical journey, a journey that shaped modern America. America, before the Lincoln Highway, the grand dream begins. Over a century ago, the American transportation landscape was vastly different from what we see today. It was an era when cross-country automobile roads existed only in the wildest dreams. The routes we knew were simply simple dirt roads, mostly used by farmers and ranchers to transport goods, livestock, or to get to the nearest town for necessities. They didn't lead far, and they were often in miserable condition. Just imagine, those roads were blindingly dusty on dry, sunny days and transformed into utterly impassable quagmires every time it rained. Traveling from one state to another, or even just from a large city to a remote rural area, was a true challenge, consuming enormous time and effort. In that context, the main mode of long-distance travel, connecting the vast lands of America, was mostly trains. Trains had been the lifeline of the nation for decades, carrying passengers and goods, but they bound people to rigid schedules and fixed routes. The freedom to explore remained a distant concept for most people. However, a revolution was quietly brewing. That was the rise of the automobile. The first automobiles had appeared a few decades prior, but they were far too expensive, merely playthings of the wealthy. They were symbols of luxury, not common vehicles for the masses. It wasn't until 1908 that an event shook the nascent auto industry, the birth of the Ford Model T. The Model T wasn't just a car, it was the first mass-produced car, with its price drastically reduced to a groundbreaking level. This changed everything. Suddenly, automobiles became financially feasible for the middle class, opening a new era of personal transportation. For the first time, millions of Americans could travel at their own pace and schedule, freely exploring distant lands, unfettered by train tracks or docks. This was the beginning of a revolution, unleashing huge potential for long-distance trips, but simultaneously highlighting a major problem. America needed better, more roads to serve this mobile revolution. Amidst that backdrop, a grand vision was sparked by pioneers. Carl G. Fisher, a brilliant entrepreneur in the automobile industry, famous for being the manufacturer of Presto Light headlights and the builder of the legendary Indianapolis Motor Speedway, had a daring dream. He dreamed of a transcontinental stone road stretching across America. Fisher believed that the true popularity of automobiles hinged entirely on good roads. He realized that no matter how cheap cars became, people couldn't travel far if the roads were just dust and mud. In 1912, Fisher proposed this bold plan, calling for the construction of the Transcontinental Rock Highway. His ambition was to complete this road before the Panama Pacific International Exposition in 1915 in San Francisco, an incredibly ambitious goal at the time. However, the person who gave this project its historic name was Henry Joy. Henry Joy, president of Packard Motor Car Company, an equally visionary individual, proposed calling the road the Lincoln Highway. Fisher immediately recognized this as the perfect name because Abraham Lincoln, one of America's greatest presidents, had unified the country during the Civil War. This name not only carried deep historical significance, but also brought immense patriotic appeal, easily gaining wide support from the public and leaders. Fisher didn't want this gigantic project to be his personal effort alone. He understood that for a national-scale project like this to succeed, it needed the participation of many parties. It needed a strong organization. Therefore, Henry Joy was appointed president of the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, an organization that would lead this entire endeavor. It was a moment in history when a great dream of connection and freedom of movement began to take shape, laying the foundation for one of America's most iconic transportation projects. The end of the named road era and the birth of modern highway systems. The Lincoln Highway was a private project, but its vision soon extended beyond individual or organizational scope. The LHA recognized that for a truly effective nationwide road system, government support was essential. They actively lobbied the government to support road construction, particularly emphasizing its importance to national security, convincing the Department of Defense of the strategic benefits of better roads. The military importance of roads was clearly demonstrated in 1919, when a massive military motor convoy was dispatched transcontinentally along the Lincoln Highway. This convoy, comprising nearly 300 soldiers and 80 vehicles, began its arduous journey from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. This trip was far from easy. With roads not yet fully paved, the convoy frequently encountered mud, got stuck, and had mechanical breakdowns. The entire journey lasted 62 days, with an average speed of just a few miles per hour. One of the members participating in this historic trip was young Colonel Dwight D. Eisenhower, then a relatively little-known officer in the U.S. Army. This challenging experience left a profound impression on him. It demonstrated the urgent need for paved roads for national defense, for the rapid and efficient movement of troops and equipment in case of a national emergency. Eisenhower later drew on this very experience to form his vision for a modern, efficient, interstate highway system for America. This was a future-shaping moment, not just for transportation, but also for U.S. national security. After World War I, with the automobile boom and the growing awareness of the strategic importance of roads, the federal government began to act. The Federal Highway Act of 1921 was a significant landmark. This act provided matching funds to states for road construction, encouraging cooperation between the federal government and the states to develop the road network. As a result, rapid road improvements took place across the country. Large-scale concrete road construction projects began to appear, transforming muddy dirt roads into more solid routes. However, along with this rapid development, a new problem arose: the proliferation of hundreds of different named roads. Every organization, every community seemed to want their own named road, leading to a confusing jumble of roads for drivers. Imagine trying to navigate cross-country when every mile had a different name, a different signage system, or even no signs at all. This caused serious difficulty in navigation and reduced the efficiency of the road network. To address this chaotic situation, Washington authorities proposed a numbering convention for all national roads. The idea was to create a uniform, easy-to-understand system using standard federal shield signs, the familiar shield symbol we see on highways today. This decision meant that the signs of the named roads were eliminated, making way for a much more logical and efficient system. This was a great leap forward, bringing clarity and order to America's road network. For the Lincoln Highway, this change meant that it relinquished its independent designation to become part of the national highway system. The Lincoln Highway was designated as U.S. Route 30 for most of its length, spanning across many states. However, in other areas, it also became US 1, US 530, US 40, and US 50, reflecting its integration into a larger and more complex network. This marked the end of a golden era of named roads, but simultaneously opened a new chapter for American road travel. Before the ushering in of the National Numbered Highway System, the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, had successfully completed its historic mission. In the fall of 1926, the LHA leadership voted to disband at the end of 1927. They recognized that their initial goal, a transcontinental highway network, was becoming a reality through the efforts of the federal government and the states. The LHA played a pioneering role, demonstrating the feasibility and necessity of such a road. When the government took over this role, the LHA gloriously fulfilled its historical duty. To honor Abraham Lincoln and the road's legacy, in 1928, a final and meaningful effort was undertaken. Thousands of Boy Scouts across the country placed nearly 3,000 concrete markers bearing the Lincoln Highway emblem along the entire route. These markers were not just road signs, they were small monuments, reminding us of the great vision, the perseverance of those who built this road, and its role in connecting America. Today, finding one of these markers is still a special moment for history enthusiasts, a tangible reminder of a bygone era. How do you think the shift from historically and personally significant named roads to a modern numbered system impacted the American road trip experience? Do you think we lost some of the soul of the journey? Exploring Wyoming, where history and nature intersect. The journey along the Lincoln Highway takes us through many states, each with its unique character. But upon entering Wyoming, travelers experience a unique blend of history and the wild nature of the American West. Cheyenne, Wyoming, is one of 5 state capitals that the Lincoln Highway passed through. This place is not just an important stop, but also a living testament to the road's legacy. Today, 16th Street in Cheyenne is still renamed Lincoln Way, retaining the glorious name of the historic road. Travelers back then often chose to stay at the historic Plains Hotel, a symbol of luxury amidst the wilderness, or sought out the Free City Campground. This campground was so popular that by 1920, it had attracted up to 40,000 people, transforming Cheyenne into a bustling tourist hub. As travelers ascend to higher elevations, they will reach the Ames Monument and Sherman Hill Summit, the highest point on the Lincoln Highway, at an elevation of 8,835 feet, about 2,693 meters. Here, you will find the Lincoln Bronze Bust and the Henry Joy Monument. These monuments are not just simple sculptures, they are powerful symbols of the legacy and vision of this great road, reminding us of those who laid its foundation. Throughout its history, the Lincoln Highway was rerouted many times to improve and shorten distances. A prime example is the section passing through Telephone Canyon, built between 1919 and 1920. This was considered a feat of engineering at the time, demonstrating the unwavering efforts to transform this road into a modern and safe route. When traveling through Wyoming, tourists not only enjoy the scenery, but also have the opportunity to meet real cowboys, witness ranching activities, and interact with locals at cafes, taverns, and hotels along the highway. These experiences added to the richness of the journey. Effie Price Gladding, the adventurer we mentioned earlier, also documented these memorable interactions and encounters in detail in her diary. However, route determination was not always smooth. A fierce battle erupted between the towns of Medicine Bow and Elk Mountain over where the route should pass. Each town wanted the road to go through it to benefit economically. August Rim, a shrewd businessman in Medicine Bow, took matters into his own hands boldly. He faked road signs and even invited chambers of commerce to drive through his town, aiming to ensure that the Lincoln Highway would pass through Medicine Bow. This is an interesting story showing the importance of this road to local communities. Yet history took unexpected turns. When Interstate 180 opened in 1970, it killed Medicine Bow and other small towns like Rock River and Vosler. I-80 was designed to bypass small towns, aiming to reduce travel time. This completely changed the philosophy of travel, from a journey, where exploring roadside towns was part of the fun, to a destination, where the goal was to reach the destination as quickly as possible. This was a major shift that profoundly impacted the lives of many small communities along historic roads. And we cannot forget to mention Wyoming's unique landscapes. The Red Desert is one of the most striking attractions. Some travelers loved the pungent and aromatic characteristic smell of Wyoming sagebrush, feeling it was an integral part of the Western experience. However, others had a completely opposite view. They described it as a place where even prairie dogs, rattlesnakes, and coyotes had given up in disgust, alluding to the harshness and isolation of the region. The Lincoln Highway in this area cleverly followed the abandoned old Union Pacific Railroad grade, utilizing existing infrastructure to create a more efficient route. Upon reaching Rock Springs, a famous landmark that travelers cannot miss is the Rock Springs Coal Arch, built in 1928. This spot is known for its speed limit of only 8 miles per hour, one of the lowest along the entire route, reminding drivers to slow down and enjoy the surrounding scenery. The Green River is also a notable point on the journey. In 1913, travelers had to cross a dilapidated old bridge, considered the worst stretch of road in Wyoming. But by 1922, a new bridge was built, transforming this river crossing into a beautiful river crossing, demonstrating significant infrastructure improvement. And finally, Church Butte is a destination that surprises visitors. This place stands out with its unusual rock formations, sculpted over millions of years of weathering. F.E. Price Gladding described these rock formations as giant fortresses, standing tall amidst the landscape, creating a majestic and impressive scenery. The beginning and first challenges, the endless journey of the American dream. On July 1, 1913, in Detroit, the heart of America's young automobile industry, the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, was officially established. This wasn't just the formation of an organization. It was the first truly organized effort to develop a transcontinental road across America. The LHA's goal was crystal clear: to map, sign, and promote a transcontinental road, transforming it from an idea into a reality that everyone could use. Just over 2 months later, on September 14, 1913, the route of the Lincoln Highway was widely announced. This initial route wasn't a brand new road built from scratch, but rather a clever network connecting existing roads. It spanned over 3,300 miles, passing through 12 states and cutting across 4 time zones. Later, in 1928, the route was adjusted and expanded to pass through a total of 14 states, showing the project's evolution and adaptability over time. And then, on October 31, 1913, a historic event took place: the official dedication ceremony of the Lincoln Highway. Massive, boisterous celebrations were held along the entire route. Thousands of citizens poured into the streets, waving flags, cheering, and celebrating this momentous event. It was a day of hope, of national pride, as America looked forward with a bold vision of connection and freedom of movement. However, behind those grand promotions and exuberant celebrations, the harsh initial reality of the Lincoln Highway was very different. Despite its grand announcement, At that time, it was still just a collection of existing roads and trails, many sections of which were very rudimentary and little improved. A cross-country trip on the Lincoln Highway in its early years was still a true sporting challenge, requiring thorough preparation and nerves of steel. It could easily gobble up anywhere from 20 to 30 days of your time, a duration we can hardly imagine today for traveling across a country. A 1916 road guide listed essential items for the trip. You were advised to bring camping gear, canned food, and durable clothing. Not only that, drivers also needed to carry multiple spare tires, tire chains, jacks, and shovels to deal with muddy or damaged sections of the road. This was not a relaxing vacation, it was an arduous expedition. Effie Price Gladding, one of the first adventurers who drove along this road in 1914 from San Francisco to New Jersey, shared her invaluable experience. She emphasized the need for a calm attitude to deal with all difficulties on the road, from rough, broken roads to unexpected situations that might arise. Her story vividly outlined the challenges faced by the pioneers of the Lincoln Highway. Initially, Carl Fisher had hoped that automobile companies would contribute a significant amount of money, about $10 million, to build this road. However, Henry Ford, a highly influential figure, refused to fund it. He believed that roads should be built by the government, not by private companies. Faced with this refusal, the LHA changed its strategy. Instead of just seeking large donations, they focused on educating the public about the urgent need for better roads, especially concrete roads. To prove the superiority of this material, the LHA began building concrete seedling miles in rural areas. These were short, sample sections of road, built to high standards, so people could directly experience the smoothness and durability of concrete roads compared to dirt or common stone roads. And the culmination of this effort was the Ideal section in Indiana. This was a famous example, built to the highest standards at the time. The Ideal section was 40 feet wide, about 12 meters, 10 inches thick, about 25 centimeters, and most importantly, had no at-grade crossings, ensuring maximum safety and flow. This project was truly a dream come true, a living testament to the LHA's vision and the potential of modern roads. It wasn't just a stretch of road, it was a statement about the future of American transportation. Do you remember your first long road trips? What did the roads back then look like compared to the ones we drive on today? Share your memories in the comments. Enduring legacy. The road that never truly disappears. Although the Lincoln Highway completed its pioneering mission, its story doesn't end there. It sowed the seeds for a larger idea, a vision that would completely reshape the American transportation landscape, the interstate highway system. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower who, as a young colonel, participated in that arduous 1919 journey on the Lincoln Highway, who was deeply influenced by that experience. Not only that, during World War II, he also had the opportunity to witness Germany's efficient Autobahn network with highways designed for rapid military movement. These experiences formed in Eisenhower a strong vision for a nationwide limited-access highway network, highways that allowed for fast, safe, and efficient travel without interruption from intersections or traffic lights. When he became president in 1953, Eisenhower brought this vision to life. He signed the Federal Highway Acts of 1954 and 1956, providing massive funding and the legal framework to build a modern highway network. This was one of the largest and most ambitious public infrastructure projects in American history, completely transforming how people traveled and how the economy operated. Eisenhower believed that this road network was not only essential for civilian transportation, but also a crucial part of the national defense system during the Cold War. The result of this act was the birth of the interstates we know today. In particular, Interstate 80 replaced much of the Lincoln Highway's route, stretching from New Jersey to California. I-80 was designed for much higher speeds, greater safety, and efficiency than its predecessor. While I-80 represented progress and modernity, it simultaneously changed the role of the older roads. Today, many sections of the Lincoln Highway lie abandoned and in disrepair, forgotten, gradually fading into oblivion under the dust of time. Meanwhile, other sections are still used as local routes, serving the daily commuting needs of small communities. This situation symbolizes a fundamental shift in travel philosophy, from a journey being paramount to merely a means to reach a destination. The speed and efficiency of the interstates diminished the charm of slowing down and enjoying the scenery that trips on the Lincoln Highway once offered. However, the legacy of the Lincoln Highway never truly vanished. In the 1980s, a new interest in the Lincoln Highway began to blossom. This revival was largely thanks to Drake Hokanson's inspiring photo book. His book wasn't just about photographs. It spoke to the emotion of the road, of getting off the interstates, of rediscovering America. It evoked a nostalgia for a simpler time, when road trips were true adventures, full of surprises and discovery. This new interest led to the formation of the new Lincoln Highway Association in 1992. This organization was founded with a clear mission: to identify, preserve, and improve access to remaining sections of the Lincoln Highway and its related historic sites. They tirelessly worked to seek out old road sections, forgotten bridges, faded signs, and vintage buildings that were once an integral part of the road. Their goal is not just to preserve history, but to rekindle the spirit of exploration and adventure in a new generation. A testament to this resurgence was the 100th anniversary event in 2013. 270 members from around the world drove to Kearney, Nebraska to celebrate this historic milestone. It wasn't just a gathering, it was a common journey where enthusiasts could share their stories, explore old road sections, and recreate the spirit of the pioneers. This event showed the strong vitality of the Lincoln Highway in the hearts of history and road trip lovers. The current value of the Lincoln Highway lies in the experience it offers. Exploring the Lincoln Highway today provides the opportunity to slow down and enjoy the pleasure of motoring that previous generations had. It's not about speed or efficiency, but about discovering the history of both the road and America 1 mile at a time. It's a return to the getting there is half the fun spirit of early 20th century automobile pioneers, where the journey mattered more than the destination. Fortunately, many old road sections, bridges, hotels, and old stops still exist. They are not just physical structures. They are pieces of all the lost eras of American life. They tell stories of those who traveled them, of social and cultural changes, and of the evolution of America. When you drive on an old Lincoln Highway section, you're not just driving on a road, you're driving on history, touching the spirit of a bygone era, and rediscovering a part of yourself on that journey. The Lincoln Highway may have given way to modern, faster, and more efficient roads, but its spirit lives on in memories, in the roads we can still explore. For those who truly want to experience America most authentically, who want to relive what the early automobile pioneers experienced, try once to get off the interstate and seek out parts of the old road, the road of dreams, of freedom, and of endless adventure. After 100 years on the Lincoln Highway, we realize that the journey itself is the most important thing, not the destination. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful and interesting, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the WhoRemembers channel so you don't miss future videos, and share with history lovers. See you in the next fascinating historical journey.